Great, Joe. Excited to be on with you today. Joe, we'd love to hear a little bit more about your background. How'd you come into this role? Tell us a little bit about Park Street Church and your growth into this role, and what all you do there at Park Street.
Sure, sure. Yeah, thanks for having me on. So I was born and raised in Egypt, and so in the Coptic Orthodox Church, moved to the States in 2002 with my family. We got the lottery, immigrated here, and then became a Christian around the year 2009. Before that, we were just nominal family, and then when I graduated seminary. I was selling cars
Wait,
and
you went
but
to
I was
seminary.
I went to seminary. Yeah, I went to Knox Seminary
Okay.
in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And so that was about 4 years, and then got married and was selling cars and was also studying accounting. And so I finished my MDiv before my bachelor's in accounting, which is I wouldn't recommend it. And then uh,
Okay, that's not the typical approach to
yeah, you
okay.
typically just want to do grad school after. And so yeah, so I was married, selling cars, finishing my degree, and then in 2019, a brother through another church told me that Park Street was looking for a staff accountant. And so jumped on board and just started to soak up and learn as much as I can. I graduated during COVID. And so, yeah, so it was like an online graduation, but that's okay. And then yeah, been with Park Street since 2019. And yeah, my boss, the financial controller, retired in like 2022 or the end of 2021. And then they asked me to step into that role. So been controller since then, and I've been loving it. It's just been very rewarding, very it's just been enriching in so many ways. And I just get to do so many different things in my role. And it's not just one specific thing. And that's what's made it fun. It's been great.
Oh, that's a great story. Joe, walk us through. I think then maybe you probably have a unique perspective, right? You've got the ministry side of it, having gone to seminary. You've got the financial and the operational side of it. How do you bring those together in a way that often in our nonprofits can be, in our churches and our nonprofits can be a little bit hard to bring both sides of that together in an organization? Talk to us a little bit about your experience there.
Yeah. Man, it's hard. I think so from my perspective, I've been serving as a bivocational pastor. And so like on the weekends, I serve as a pastor at Arabic Baptist Church with along my wife Sally. And so that that's on the ministerial side. And then 9 to 5 during the week, I support from the finance side, Park Street Church. And so it's cool because I get to see things from the different perspectives. Obviously, at the church where I serve as pastor, I try to be hands off. I can preach on giving, but I would rather just stay hands off of the actual like admin and finance stuff, and I do. But here, I get to support the different ministers and budget heads and those who are actually like engaged with the mission. And there's been a lot of frustration at times, I think on both sides, right?
Okay.
Because like the ministers are doing the work of the gospel, right? On the front lines, shepherding people, dealing with all of these messy situations and joyful situations. And then here's Joe from the finance office, badgering them about getting their expenses in on time. And I think what I realized a couple of years ago is that, you know, since they're shepherds, maybe it would help if I have like a one-to-one human interaction with them where I would explain to them how what they do on a month-end basis in their admin, duty, how that impacts me and how that impacts the other people who are on the staff. Because most people do attend Park Street Church, right? And so in a way, like you are a shepherd over, these members who just happen to also serve in the finance office. And so man, I remember like having these conversations and like one time one of the pastors came up to me afterwards and was like, "Hey, like I'm convicted." And but it's great, right? Like I mean, I think all that they need to be informed of is, hey, like what you do genuinely impacts what we do and the outputs and the deadlines that are required of us. And ultimately, what you feed us, we end up feeding to the committees that end up, who are volunteers and meet on a monthly basis, give of their time, give of the resources, sacrifice time with family so that budgets can be approved, so that you have a budget to do the work of the ministry. And so, anyways, I think just them hearing the impact and hearing how what they do, for us, that inconvenience of the admin stuff that, we ask them to do, it's not just, theoretical. Like it actually impacts everybody, even the volunteers
Mm.
who are members that they are shepherds over. And so, yeah, that's maybe
Joe,
a
that's helpful.
long-winded
You know,
answer,
you
but
you you bring up this thing we talk about a lot, and the way I help manage companies and churches and all that. There's three components to good operations. You have people, you have process, and you have technology.
mm,
And on the finance and operations side, sometimes I think we default a little bit, right? We have a bias towards process and technology. Well, this is the process. This is the budget process. Get your
yeah,
receipts turned in, et cetera. And we have technology to do that. But it sounds like because of this bivocational experience and some of what you have there, you see the importance of bringing the people side into this. This is why we do it. And my guess
yeah,
is you probably also asked them and you've adjusted your process and maybe even the technology some in response to bringing the people into that side. Because at the end of the day, it's the people who do the mission, right?
yeah, yeah.
So talk about that a little bit. How have you had to shape your process? And we'll talk about technology maybe here in a minute, or if you want to jump in, go right ahead. But how do you shape your process and your thinking on that so we fit to what the people are looking for to accomplish the mission?
Yeah. Well, maybe we could talk about both just simultaneously, the technology and the process, and
That'd be
obviously the
great.
people's impacting both. So I would say on the technology front, I when I first moved into my role, the process for the month end, closing was basically exporting, bank details from Bank of America, download it, and then, manipulate Excel to have, one sheet per employee of all of their charges.
Pivot
Uh,
tables. How many
yeah,
pivot
yeah,
tables were you
that's
using
right,
there?
that's
Yep.
right. Yeah, we
Yeah.
pivot, man. And then you send it, fire it off to each person and then they print it. And then at that time, it was 2019. And so they would print all of the receipts and then, they would fill out, each expense, purpose, blah, blah, blah account. And then I would get a stack this big from each employee at the end of each month after they're done, gathering all of their stuff. And then I would go through and reconcile. But like, imagine like that's overwhelming for anybody.
Yeah.
Like to demand that of a pastor, or a children's director. And so at that point, we made the decision that we needed to find a good solution, right? Like this old school Bank of America system, this just wasn't working. And so we eventually landed with ClearCard, and ClearCard was a game changer because now the pastor is going out for coffee with a church member and they have an application, gives them a notification, they're able to snap pictures. And so I've been encouraging our people, hey, like there's already now a system in place where you don't have to just accrue all of this work for month end, just like do it on the spot. It's like it already gives you a notification, snap a picture, and you never have to worry about working for 5 hours to get me a stack of paper. And so ever since we've been like digitizing and going with the ClearCard app, that's helped our people tremendously. Um, and not just on the credit card side, right? Where like now it's super convenient, just fill everything out and you're done. But on the bill pay side, because now we don't have to like bother people with physical signatures. We used to have this like cumbersome reimbursement request form, and they would have to come
Right.
to the finance and fill it out and go and try, and now everything's just like, man, let me just log in, get a notification. I'm able to track the ministry expenses, and like the budget heads, have all sorts of visibility into that. And so I would say that that's transformed it for us and for them. And the streamlining was actually just a blessing,
Mm.
because now they don't have to worry. Now they don't have to, go here and go there and track this person down. And, so that's been transformative. And I think that's combined all three, process, technology, and people.
Hmm.
And it's just blessed our staff, with
Yeah.
the streamlining. So
Hey, that's really helpful insight. I'm curious for you, Joe. as you think about technology, right? We're all used to this, right? There's this generational shift kind of happening in church and
Mm,
finance and nonprofit leadership, and technology is a huge part of that. And yet, technology always makes this promise, right? It's going to make life so much better, so much easier. It's going to, and
mm,
I feel like technology rarely, though, lives up to that expectation. Again, because it fits into people and it fits into process. How do
yeah.
you view technology in general when you're rolling out some of this technology for your church or managing it? How do you keep the people and process all in alignment with your tech? It sounds like you've done that well in order to make this successful at Park Street.
Yeah, maybe that came across as, perfect, but it's not. Yeah. So I think I have like an um open-handedness to this whole, streamlining process that we went through as a church. And so, we've come to a point where, like for Easter or for Christmas, the deadlines that we have as the finance office remain the same.
Hmm.
But the people who are on the ground, like doing the ministry for that intense week that's very stressful,
Yeah.
as much as we've given them the ability to have things on the go and to, just go online, like we've made it easier. We've given them all of the tools that they need, but the demand on them is still, hefty around, those Christmas and Easter, blah, 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 and all of these other, important dates throughout the year.
Exactly.
But we also have deadlines and there's still budgets to be approved and financials to be presented. And so, yeah, I've just come to it open-handed and we've, asked them, hey, like if you cannot say, for example, submit receipts for us to do verifications and stuff, at least have like this information in, like the bare minimum that
Hmm.
we need,
Hmm.
and we will give you grace for a week or two, right? And that way you're done with the really busy ministry season. And then you're able to, and then we will work with that, right? And sometimes we just have to, as the finance admin people, we just have to take on extra work. And
Yeah.
that's okay. Like that's what we signed up for because we, in doing so, are supporting the mission and are supporting them. Yeah. And I realized that like enforcing deadlines from our end can really stress others out, even with the technology, even with the process. And so I've been learning to be gracious and to be understanding, but also to communicate like, the minimum information that we need, for us to survive and people to be informed, on a monthly basis and annual basis. So yeah, just trying to be open-handed about it and gracious, but
Yeah.
also just firm where we need to because, life still happens and
It's still a
deadlines are
job.
still
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Still a job.
It's hard. Yeah, it's a hard dynamic, but
We've been prepping for some summer program at our church, Joe, and it was actually I love your idea of sitting down and meeting with people. I didn't do this as one-on-ones, and you make me think I should do that and have some one-on-ones. Like, how can I support you in this time?
yeah.
Uh, but we were having a meeting recently, and they were talking about all the different things they had to do for this summer camp, and I was getting overwhelmed just thinking about all that they had to do. And it was this kind of eye opener for me where I realized, oh, that's how they feel when we get to month end close and I need all this information.
Yeah.
We're trying to track down and we've got some volunteers that, we're going to reimburse or that's very overwhelming to them. And it was this eye opener to realize like, oh, the things that they find easier and the things that I find easier are not the
Mm,
same.
yeah.
And it's neat to see how diversity makes our team stronger, but
Yeah.
also to realize, like to your point, how much grace do I need to bring into this?
Yeah.
While at the same time saying, how do we stick with the things that legally, from a stewardship standpoint, from a responsibility to our donors standpoint, we still need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
What?
really that's really good. And I think I can grow in that in, not just communicating with people about us, but communicating with people about, hey, like tell me about, and I started to do that, like when I got feedback of, hey, please hold off, like, give us time, it's a very stressful week. Like that was a red flag for me of like, okay, I need to understand and see things from the on the ground minister's perspective, Yeah. So no,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that. It's helpful.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I know with summer coming up, that's a busy time for a lot of us. Joe, what are some of the tips and tricks that you might give for someone coming into this relatively new? Like I said, I talk to people a lot of times who are like, no one was willing to kind of step into this role at our nonprofit, at our church. Uh, maybe it's the curse of competence. They find someone who's good at the details and kind of knows how to keep things together. And that's the person that gets asked to step into this. So they often don't have your background or my background in finance and operations. That being said, I think with technology available today, you're perfectly able to do this really well. So maybe what advice would you have for someone stepping into a relatively new role as a finance leader in a smaller or even mid-sized nonprofit?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. I would say, yeah, embrace the technology. Um, Especially if you feel like you have no support and no help. I mean, like obviously there's many people you can reach out to. I have a treasurer who's she works for NSTAR full time, but she's a
Okay.
treasurer at
So a
her church.
volunteer treasurer.
Yeah, yeah, volunteer treasurer.
Okay.
And so she calls me every once in a while and she's like, "Hey, let me get your thoughts on this. Is there a platform that I could use to help me with this? Or how do you think about
Hmm.
budgeting?" And so I think like, I tried to find a Facebook group before of like, church controllers or something like that. I haven't had much luck, with finding a community, but they're out there. I would reach out to you can reach out to me, you can reach,
Hmm.
Owen Hill. But yeah, I would just, find a church, email the person, and on the other side is a finance person who needs the support or would love to give support, and so I think just find camaraderie
Hmm.
in the 380,000 churches in the USA
That's right.
and
And we
just
can't
realize
always vent to our fellow staff members, but man,
that's right.
sometimes it's nice to have someone who just listen to us. Like,
Oh man,
and you just commiserate together on
I
trying to get
totally,
receipts from the worship leader.
yeah, yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. Hey, Joe,
Yeah.
speaking of tech, and I'm
Yeah.
curious on this front, if you're willing to share, what's your church's approach? What's your approach been to AI? Do you use it? Do you not use it? How do you wrap that into your scope of work right now? I know that's a sensitive area, but I'd love to hear your insights so far on that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I use it with a seatbelt.
Okay.
And so yeah, especially that, we had roles, transition over the last couple of years. And so the support time that I've had hasn't been what it previously was. And so I've been using AI basically as an exec assistant, and to help me with repetitive tasks, for example, like I have my minutes, minutes notes that I take, during a specific meeting. And obviously I'm cautious, especially if there's sensitive data. And so I always take that out or, you know, um, and I always do the paid subscription just because the unpaid one, I don't
How are
know
they
what
making money?
yeah, how that is used. At least it's more secure. But for sure, I mean, like, it cut down the time that it would take me because I already have my notes, and I already have all the work that I've been doing for so many years. And so, I've been just using it to help me to get information out quicker.
Hmm.
Yeah. And, I think in Excel, you can there's Claude as an add-in in Excel. There's Shortcut, which was developed by a friend of a friend out of MIT, and Shortcut in Excel is just a helpful tool, that
Okay.
you can use to, with whatever formulas or formatting. But yeah, I'm all for using AI responsibly and overseeing it. I mean, the amount of hallucinations and, false information that it would give. And so, yeah, I just like I think using it with a grain of salt, it can be very helpful as a language model, but just to be, yeah, you actually have to do the work and supervise, but I think it
Yeah.
can actually help and help, especially if you don't have the support and the time and the energy and the staff. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm
I
all
like the
for
way you
it.
mentioned whether with a seatbelt or within controls. I find you're right. I start having trouble with it if I'm going to use it to try to replace my job as a human.
Yeah,
That's not the appropriate role. But to
yeah,
help me know what questions to ask, I
yeah,
love being able to upload a month's worth of transactions and say, hey, which one of these should I dive into more? It's
yeah,
great at calling out some trends. It's great at recognizing when Um, at our church, we have a policy: don't order stuff on your personal Amazon account, and part of that's just to protect the people long term, right? We've got a business Amazon account, and so it's helpful for flagging when personal Amazon charges are popping up, and then we can have a conversation with that user to make sure that church cards are not loaded up into personal accounts there. To
Yeah.
analyze subscriptions as well, right? Sometimes those subscriptions they want to kind of sneak in and surprise us with some of those subscription changes, and those can get lost in the mix as we're doing the
Yep.
work. But so trends and questions that I need to dive into
Yeah.
more, AI has certainly been helpful.
Yeah. No, that's really good. That's really good. Yeah, I was speaking to an auditor and just asking them, if they've embraced AI, and she was saying that yeah, to a certain extent, so they now have an AI platform, that they feed, the client data to, and then, it randomly makes selections or, yeah, recognizes trends, but it gives them a baseline, right? So they're still doing their work, they're still auditing, but it just it takes care of like the initial legwork, that then lets the auditors dive much deeper and do their, job really, really well. And so yeah, I think there's for sure, as you said, a great way to use it and utilize it, but it cannot replace humans. I mean,
That's for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, for
Joe, I
sure.
know you mentioned this before, but as we wrap up here, I want to honor people's time and
Yeah.
all. I know you mentioned maybe someone's ability, if they're in a spot they don't know who to reach out to, that they could potentially reach out to you. Do you mind if we kind of offer that if we post this and someone hears that and they would be
Absolutely.
encouraged by reaching out
Yeah.
to you uh, if they comment or something like that, if they could be in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
And I would just like to say, like on the tech side, if people, yeah, would love to answer people's questions too, just to help, if they're, a treasurer of a smaller church. We basically have an accounting, a giving, and then expense management clear card. And it is so doable, to get started and to not be overwhelmed and to just let, these tools just work for you. And so it just takes the initial setup, but totally doable. It's not
I love
overwhelming.
that.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, Joe, I think you're certainly very modest. I know you've got a neat operation going on over there at Park Street. So God bless you and your work over
Yeah.
there, and may it continue to flourish, and may your role there continue to be a blessing to others, brother.
Yeah. Thanks, Owen. God bless you. Take